All right, we are ready to roll. Live. Okay, it's good to see everybody. And just give one more second, we'll be set up. Goranga. Here we are. Okay, so we'll start chanting Jai Radha Madhava. Good to see everybody here for the evening class. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopi Jana Malaba Girivardhati Gopi Jana Malaba Girivardhati Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari Gopi Jana Malaba Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Ranhuman Hova Kunya Bihari Jaya Radhamad Hova Kunya Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya also Tada Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Savaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Jai Rem say Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Ki Jai Mathuram Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shivani Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Gaur. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Dejatarani. So, Om Gana Timadandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Of course, you'll have to excuse the sound in the background. Of course, we have to offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of our spiritual master, His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened our eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while we were blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So please excuse the sound in the background. It is raining out. I have absolutely no control of the rain. I'm sorry about that. So we'll go on with our study of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Here we go. We're on the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the universal form. And as I mentioned many times before, in this particular chapter, I'm not interested in the universal form. But because it's the Bhagavad Gita, I'm interested in reading about it because it gives realization, but I'm not interested in seeing the universal form. The one form of Krishna I don't want to see. Every other form is okay with me. So, we are continuing, I believe it's the 47th verse in this chapter. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Maya Prasanena Tavarjunena Dam Rupam Param Dashitam Atma Yogat Tejo Mayam Vishwam Anantadajam Yanme Twadanyena Natrishta Purvam. Shri Bhagavan Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Maya, by me, Prasanena, happily, Tava, unto you, Arjuna, O Arjuna, Idam, this, Rupam, form, Param, transcendental, Darshitam, shown, Atma Yogat, by my internal potency, Teja Mayam, full of effulgence, Vishwam, the entire universe, Anantam, unlimited, Ajam, original, Yat, that which may my, what, Anyena, besides you, Nadrishta Purvam, no one has previously seen. So the translation is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, happily I have shown you by my internal potency the supreme universal form within the material world. No one before you has ever seen this primal form, unlimited and full of glaring effulgence. So as we mentioned several times before, this particular manifestation of the universal form was first shown to Arjuna. Although there have been other manifestations, unlimited types of manifestations of the universal form that were shown previously. For example, Duryodhana, when Krishna was trying to make peace between the Pandavas and Kurus, Duryodhana one time tried to capture Krishna, thinking that if he captured Krishna, then the Pandavas would have no enthusiasm to fight anymore. Krishna would be their captive. So anyway, Krishna showed his universal form to Duryodhana, but it was a different universal form. Universal form basically means, or a universal form, it's a category of different manifestations that basically means or shows how Krishna is everything, in one sense. But we know the Achincha Beta Tattva philosophy, that is Lord Chaitanya's teaching of one and different simultaneously and conceivably, that in one sense Krishna is everything, and in another sense Krishna is different. Just like was described in class this morning, that Krishna is immanent and transcendent. He's in this world, or he's everything basically, and he's also outside of this world. So he's everything, he's under control, everything in this world is under the control of Krishna, directly and indirectly. And also Krishna is outside of this world with his own activities. So, purport. Arjuna wanted to see the universal form of the Supreme Lord. So Lord Krishna, out of his mercy upon his devotee Arjuna, showed his universal form full of effulgence and opulence. This form was glaring like the sun, and its many faces were rapidly changing. Krishna showed this form just to satisfy the desire of his friend Arjuna. This form was manifested by Krishna through his internal potency, which is inconceivable by human speculation. Remember, Krishna has an internal potency, an external potency, Jiva soul, Vishnu Shakti Para Prakta, Generally, the Shaktis or energies of Krishna are defined in three different ways. One is the spiritual potency, One is the jiva soul, that's us, who can go either way, and one is the avidya karma potency. That means the material potency, which is full of ignorance and ignorant activities. No one had seen this universal form of the Lord before Arjuna, but because the form was shown to Arjuna, other devotees in the heavenly planets and other planets in outer space could also see it. They had not seen it before, but because of Arjuna, they were also able to see it. In other words, all the disciplic devotees of the Lord could see the universal form, which was shown to Arjuna by the mercy of Krishna. Someone has commented that this form was shown to Duryodhana also when Krishna went to Duryodhana to negotiate peace. Unfortunately, Duryodhana did not accept the peace offer, but at that time Krishna manifested some of his universal forms. In other words, exactly what we said. It was another universal form, this unlimited universal form, just like you look up in the sky and you see all the different stars and planets and whatever else is out there. You think, wow, it's great. And that's a universal form. Also, if you're in the middle of war and the bombs are falling, that's another universal form. So there's unlimited universal forms. But those forms are different from this one shown to Arjuna. It is clearly said that no one had ever seen this form before. Remember that. Next text. Naveda yagyayan haradanar chakriya birna tapo virugrai evam rupas shakya hamri loke rastum tvadanyena kuru pravira. Na, never, Veda yajna, by sacrifice. Adiyai, adnahai, or Vedic study. Na, never. Danahai, by charity. Na, never. Cha, also. Piyavihi, by pious activities. Na, never. Tapobihi, by serious penances. Ugrahai, severe. Evam rupa, in this form. Shakyaha, can. Aham, I, re. Loke, in this material world. Drastum, be seen. Twat, and you. Anyena, by another. Kuru Pravira, O best among the Kuru warriors. Translation, O best of the Kuru warriors, no one before you has ever seen this universal form of mine, for neither by studying the Vedas, nor by performing sacrifices, nor by charity, nor by pious activities, nor by severe penances, can I be seen in this form in the material world. But actually, no one can actually understand anything or see any form of God and understand God's presence simply by studying the Vedas. Let's talk about all these different things. There's a statement in the Mahabharata, Tarko Pratishta Shuti Na Vibhina. The Vedas are so multifarious. There's so many different varieties of Vedic literatures. Just like we heard in class this morning, Veda means knowledge. And any type of knowledge that is bona fide is considered Vedic. So by studying the Vedas, you'll never understand Krishna because there's so many different shlokas for different folks, or different shlok is like or different verses for different personalities in different situations. So you really won't understand the totality. Sometimes it's said one cannot see the forest for the trees. In other words, because you're surrounded by all these trees, you don't see the totality of the forest. Nor by performing sacrifices, because the only thing that pleases Krishna, Bhaktimam Abhijanati Yavanyas Chasmi Tatvataha, is bhakti, of love. Nor by charity, nor by pious activities, nor by severe penances can you see Krishna or in any of his forms. Because Krishna has to reveal these things to you. And Krishna doesn't reveal things to those who are envious. Asharana Purusha Dharma Shastra Pravantapa Prapyamam Nivartante Michu Samsara Varmani. Those who don't have faith, they return to birth and death in this material world. So the divine vision in this connection should be clearly understood. Who can have divine vision? Divine means godly. Unless one attains the status of divinity as a demigod, he cannot have divine vision. And what is a demigod? It is stated in the Vedic scriptures that those who are devotees of Lord Vishnu are demigods. Vishnu Bhakta Smrita Devaha. Those who are atheistic, that is, who do not believe in Vishnu, or who recognize only the impersonal part of Krishna as the supreme, cannot have the divine vision. It is not possible to decry Krishna and at the same time have the divine vision. One cannot have the divine vision without becoming divine. In other words, those who have divine vision can also see like Arjuna. So it's interesting how Prabhupada states here in the state in the Vedic literatures that those who are devotees of Lord Vishnu are demigods. So, basically speaking, those who are members of the Krishna consciousness movement are demigods, but not in the same sense as the demigods in the heavenly planets, who are controlling different aspects of the material creation. The Bhagavad Gita gives the description of the universal form. Although this description was unknown to everyone before Arjuna, now one can have some idea of the Vishwa Rupa. Rupa means form, Vishwa means universe. After this incident, those who are actually divine can see the universal form of the Lord, but one cannot be divine without being a pure devotee of Krishna. The devotees, however, who are actually in the divine nature and who have divine vision are not very much interested in seeing the universal form of the Lord. That's what I've been speaking about. I am not interested. What for? As described in the previous verse, Arjuna desired to see the four-handed form of Lord Krishna as Vishnu, and he was actually afraid of the universal form. In this verse, there are some significant words, just like Veda Yagya Dhyaya Nahai, which refers to studying Vedic literature and the subject matter of sacrificial regulations. Veda refers to all kinds of Vedic literature, such as the four Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva, and the 18 Puranas, the Upanishads, and the Vedanta Sutra. I guess I should describe what all those things are. Because the four Vedas are generally considered the oldest of the Vedic literatures. Now, it's interesting that before this age, the four Vedas were encapsulated in one Veda, but they were divided, just like you have. Please don't raise hands or do anything until I'm finished, unless it's just something important like the sound isn't working or something like that, because it makes things really confusing. So anyway, there was one Veda before, and they were divided by Srila Vyasadeva. That's why Vyasadeva is called Vyas. There's two words, Vyas and Samas. Samas means put together, and Vyas means divide. So it was necessary to divide the Vedas because the coming Yuga, which we're in right now, is the Kali Yuga. So there's the Rig Veda. Rig Veda is the Veda of hymns. Yajur Veda is the Veda of instructions on how to do sacrifices. Sama Veda is the Veda of music and rhythm and all those things like that. And Atharva Veda is the Veda, sometimes it has like curses and how Brahmins can curse other people, weapons and stuff like that. And there's also other supplementary Vedic literatures that are not even mentioned here, such as the Ayurveda. And then there's the 18 Puranas, of which the Srimad Bhagavatam is one. Actually, there's more than 18 Puranas. There's actually at least 108 Puranas, but there's 18 primary Puranas. And 6 of the 18 are in the mode of goodness, 6 of the 18 are in the mode of ignorance, and 6 are in the mode of passion. That means there are 4 people in those different modes. And in one sense, we can't really say they're in the mode of ignorance, but they're for those who are under the modes, such as the mode of ignorance. And so then they have the Upanishads. Upanishad means to sit closer, sit next to the Guru and learn spiritual instructions. And Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta Sutra is like a commentary on the Upanishads in short form. Sutra means a very short statement which those who are speaking assume that the listeners will understand the short statement and be able to unpack it. It's like a zip file on the computer. That if you give someone a file, it's a zip file, then they have to unzip it. In the same way, there's statements in the Vedanta Sutra that really need a lot of explanation unless one is actually advanced in spiritual life. For example, in the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, you have the statement, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, which basically means now is the time to look for the absolute truth. So, what does it mean? Where do you look? Etc. You really have to know where to look. But it's meant for those who are more intelligent to know where to look. And then also Janma Jasya Yataha, which is similar to the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The absolute truth is that from which everything comes. So it really requires extensive commentaries and explanations. And the acharyas, such as Ramanujacharya and Nimbarkacharya, and of course Baladeva Vijayabhushan, and Srila Vyasadeva himself, wrote commentaries on the Vedanta Sutras in order to elaborate on them. But the natural commentary of the Vedanta Sutra that we accept, in addition to Baladeva Vijayabhushan's commentary, which is known as the Govinda Bhash, I should talk about that in a second. Anyway, is the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam actually is a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, but Vedanta Sutra is a short commentary on the Upanishads. So, let's talk about, I mentioned I would talk about Baladeva Vijayabhushan's commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. It's a very interesting story in that regard. Once upon a time, there were deities in Vrindavan. And these deities, these two deities we're going to talk about right now, were Radha Govinda. And Radha Govinda deities were taken to Jaipur. Jaipur is in Rajasthan. Now, Rajasthan is a place where there's Rajputs. You may say, why is that important? Because the Rajputs are very fierce and they can defend their territory. So the reason Radha Govinda were taken to Jaipur, which is incidentally is called Jaipur because it's the city of victory, is because that's the one city or the one state of India that was actually mostly protected from the onslaught of the Mughal or Muslim invasion. So, anyway, they were taken for protection. So they were taken to Jaipur, Radha Govinda, that is Krishna, and Radharani. Okay. So what happened is once upon a time there were some personalities who were, let's say, members of another sampradaya who didn't really know about Krishna and Radharani. They just thought, Krishna's there, Radharani, girlfriend, what's it supposed to be? So they separated the two deities. So you just had Krishna on the altar, just Govinda, and not Radharani. And when the devotees in Vrindavan, because Vrindavan is about 5-6 hours away by car from Jaipur. Of course, they didn't have cars in that time. They just had ox carts or they walked or whatever. Devotees in Vrindavan were very upset that these two deities, Radha's always with Govinda, Govinda's always with Radha, that these two deities were separated. And so they were thinking, what can we do? We have to cure this philosophical misunderstanding that these devotees have. These devotees were called Ramanandis. So they were thinking, maybe we should send Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. But then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was a great acharya at that particular time. Couldn't go because he was quite old. It was too long a trip for him. So he sent his foremost disciple, protege, Baladeva Vijayabhushan, to go. And Baladeva Vijayabhushan went there, and they had a debate, and he basically defeated the Ramanandis, but they said, we do not accept defeat, we do not accept anything you're saying because you do not have a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And it was known that if someone didn't have a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, they weren't accepted as part of a bona fide sampradaya. Although Baladeva Vijayabhushan has stated the Srimad Bhagavatam is the bona fide commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by the same author, Srila Vyasadeva, who we mentioned before. And so they didn't accept that. They said, no, you have to have a specific commentary. And so Baladeva Vijayabhushan, having great faith in Krishna, said to them, all right, just give me 2 or 3 days, I'll show you the commentary. Okay. So then, in transcendental anxiety, which is a particular bhav or emotion, he went before Govinda, the deity, and he said to Govinda, my dear Govinda, there's no commentary that these people will accept. I understand the Bhagavatam is a bona fide commentary, but these people are not accepting it, so help me. And then he got instruction from the deity to write his own commentary, and basically the story goes that Krishna, Govinda, dictated the commentary. So that commentary is known as the Govinda Bhashya, which means Govinda's commentary. And so anyway, so he came like 2 or 3 days later, he came with this massive commentary. And these particular individuals who had separated Krishna from Radharani, they surrendered to him. And they brought Krishna back to be with Radharani, or brought Radharani back to be with Krishna. And so one may ask, why did Krishna allow such a thing, separation from Radharani like that? Well, the esoteric explanation of that is that Krishna and Radharani had a lover's quarrel, and Radharani stormed off. So that's very interesting, because I'm sure that some of you, perhaps not all of you, have experienced lovers' quarrels in this world, or between husband and wife or whatever. And the other person just like either storms off or doesn't talk to the other person for like a week. And so you're thinking, but this is mundane in this world. Why are we having our quarrels? Well, we're having our quarrels because there's not enough money, right? People quarrel over money. That's one of the primary reasons people quarrel. Or over the education of their child, or over where they're going to go on vacation, or over furniture. People think of all sorts of different reasons. Or they quarrel because it's one person's not getting enough attention, and another person doesn't get any flowers or something like that. So you may think in the material world it's mundane, but in the spiritual world, the quarreling is there too. And this is actually part of the enjoyment of Krishna and the enjoyment of Radharani. Because to have an enjoyable relationship, now I'm not suggesting this for any of you in the material world, there has to be ups and downs in the relationship. It can't be just like, oh, love, all you need is love, like some hippie on drugs. Isn't it? In the 1920s, 1960s, 70s. All you need is love, smile. There's this conception of love that the hippie would smoke marijuana and just have this big, stupid smile on his face, love, love, with flowers coming out of his ears. And so real love means there has to be, back and forth relationship. Sometimes it's always a faithful relationship. Remember that. It's never that one becomes unfaithful. But there's sometimes arguments. That's part of life and part of loving relationships. And that's what makes life so interesting. Without differences of opinion, life is extremely boring. Of course, please don't have a difference of opinion with your guru. Anyway, I was talking about the Vedanta Sutra. Let me continue. One can study these at home or anywhere else. Similarly, there are sutras, the Kalpa Sutra and the Mimamsa Sutra, for studying the method of sacrifice. Mimamsa, Karma Mimamsa. And Dhanahai refers to charity which is offered to a suitable party, such as those who are engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas. Similarly, pious activities refers to the Agnihotra, that means fire sacrifice, and the prescribed duties of the different castes. And the voluntary acceptance of some bodily pains is called tapasya. So one can perform all these, can accept bodily penances, give charity, study the Vedas, etc., but unless he is a devotee like Arjuna, it's not possible to see that universal form. Once upon a time, many years ago, I was in New York, and I went to see this sort of museum called Ripley's Believe It or Not. It's very interesting. I don't know if they still have it in New York. So anyway, so downstairs, they actually had a whole section in which they showed exhibits of how different monks or spiritual people would torture themselves. Seriously. They had this hair shirt thing. There was like there's a, sort of a sarcophagus where that they would put themselves in, and sometimes they sleep on a bed of nails. I'm sure you've heard about that in India, bed of nails like that. And it was just like, wow, is this spiritual life? And there was a movie, of course, many years ago called Da Vinci Code, which showed a spiritualist doing self-flagellation. That means hitting himself or torturing himself or cutting himself. And so that's ridiculous because it doesn't please the Lord. There are certain austerities that please the Lord, such as eating only food offered to Krishna, such as waking up early, such as chanting your rounds, such as reading Srimad Bhagavatam, such as eating a lot of prasadam. No, not too much. So these sort of austerities are not so difficult to perform. In fact, this Krishna conscious definition of austerities is to accept everything favorable for serving Krishna and reject everything unfavorable. And sometimes that means a lot of bodily inconvenience, such as when Srila Prabhupada crossed the ocean, of course on a boat, and he had to endure 2 heart attacks on the way over, such as when Prabhupada arrived in America and didn't know which way to turn, such as when Prabhupada had to endure all these austerities in New York. So that's tapasya. That's what Krishna wants. But if Krishna doesn't want it, if it's just for the sake of torturing your body or just inflicting some austerity on yourself, that's not going to make you Krishna conscious. As stated by, let's say, Jadabhart in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Very interesting verse in this connection. He says, Ruhuganai tat tapasad na yati na chejiyad nirva panad krahadva na chandasanaiva jalagni suryar vanal mahatpara rajobhishekam. Okay, so I will translate it. Jadabhart, anyway, he really understood how to control his senses. And he was acting like a foolish person, but when it came time for philosophy, he began to speak. And he told the king, King Rahugana one time, he said, you cannot become Krishna conscious just by executing physical austerities. Of course, as I said before, unless Krishna personally says that he will be pleased by that austerity. Otherwise, it will not make you Krishna conscious or detached from this world. Won't even make you detached from the world because you'll still have the seed of desire. Like we many times mentioned about karma. There's different aspects of karma. And the first 2 aspects are kuta and bija. Kuta is the inclination. Bija is the seed of some desire. Now, when you execute austerities, it seems like all those seeds go away. But they don't go away. They're lying dormant. Dormant. Just like you all know that story, Pandora's box, when she opened it, all these demons came out. Anyway. And some of them ran for president of the United States. Anyway, so anyways, sorry about that. So they're lying dormant. And so executing austerities, yes, makes you think that you have no desires, but as soon as you start eating again, boom, the desires come up again. Or as soon as you're exposed to some sense objects, the desires again manifest. So the only way to get rid of the desires is to fry the desires by Krishna consciousness. Cheto darpanam arjanam. You've got to cleanse the heart. Not just put the dirt under the rug. Like when I was young, I never liked to clean the house. My mother was trying to force me. So I would just sweep dirt under the rug. And so that's like doing an austerity. You sweep the dirt in your heart under the rug, but it's there and it's going to come out as soon as your mother sees it. No, as soon as you start being active again. So that's a really important point. So anyway, so unless you're a devotee, you cannot see the universal form. So, let me get back to that verse by Jadabharta. Ruganayata tapasa. You will not become Krishna conscious by executing austerity. We already mentioned that. Nayati. You will not become Krishna conscious by taking sannyas. Just like I took sannyas. But it didn't make me any more Krishna conscious. No. It was simply a change in ashram so that I can dedicate my life to Krishna. But being Krishna conscious was dependent upon how well I can chant Hare Krishna and how much I'm devoted to the order of my spiritual master. That's what determines how Krishna conscious I am. Not the order, not the color of your dress. That would be ridiculous to think that by changing the color of your dress, you'll be Krishna. That's actually one of the symptoms of Kali Yuga that people will think by wearing a specific type of dress, they become religious. It's like putting lipstick on a pig. Not taking sannyas is not the same. But thinking that changing your dress is going to make you more spiritual. It's not like that. I mean, you can be what we call a Kali Chela. Kali Chela means a disciple of Kali, and dress up like the most spiritual person and have the most beautiful voice and the most beautiful tilak on your forehead, but you could be an agent of Kali. Just like in the stories that we've been reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam, like that Palambasura demon. Palambasura was a demon, but he looked like a coward boy. And he tried to harass and carry off Balaram, and he was killed by Balaram. So it's not how you look or what ashram you're in that determines what or how Krishna conscious you are. So Huganayata tapasana yati. Nachejya nirvapana grahadva. You're not going to be Krishna conscious by putting yourself in fire in the middle of the summer or in ice in the middle of the winter. Only, here's the secret, coming up. Ready? Here's the secret. Only by taking shelter, it's described here, of course, taking a bath in the dust of the feet of a great devotee, or taking shelter, serving a great devotee, Mahatseva Mahur Vimuktes. Only by doing that can you actually become Krishna conscious. And it's very easy. If you even take the prasadam remnants of a great devotee, you follow the instructions of a great devotee, you drink the foot bathing water, it's kind of hard to get. Or prasadam remnants, foot bathing, or foot dust. It's like when I went walking on the beach with Prabhupada, I would sometimes go behind Prabhupada and go to his footprint. Some people say that he didn't touch the ground. He did touch the ground when he was walking on the beach because I saw footprints. And then I took the sand and threw it in my mouth. So that's the only way to become Krishna conscious. Not simply by taking sand and putting it in your mouth, but by serving a great devotee. But taking sand and putting it in your mouth is kind of nice too. So those who are impersonalists are also imagining that they are seeing the universal form of the Lord. But from Bhagavad Gita, we understand the impersonalists are not devotees, therefore they are unable to see the universal form of the Lord. That reminds me of some bogi yogi, that means bogus yogi, in the 1960s and 70s, who would cause his followers to see a flash of light. Somehow or other he understood things about the nerves on the forehead. I got to be careful because I may touch that same nerve as I'm giving class. And he would touch it, or near the eye, and I don't remember. Of course, I don't remember. I never had it done to me. But he would do that, and the people would just like, boom! The whole world would explode around them, apparently. And they would see a flash of light, and they thought they were seeing the universal form, and they thought that this guy, this creep, was God. But if you're not a devotee, if you don't love Krishna, you're not going to see the universal form. Forget it. It's impossible. And here Prabhupada talks about, there are many persons who create incarnations. They falsely claim an ordinary human being to be an incarnation, but all this is foolishness. There were so many in the 1960s. We should follow the principles of Bhagavad Gita, otherwise there is no possibility of attaining perfect spiritual knowledge. Although Bhagavad Gita is considered the preliminary study of the science of God, still it is so perfect that it enables one to distinguish what is what. In other words, if one understands Bhagavad Gita, you can tell fool's gold from real gold in a spiritual sense. The followers of a pseudo-incarnation, that means false incarnation, may say that they've also seen the transcendental incarnation of God, the universal form, but that is unacceptable because it is clearly stated here that unless one becomes a devotee of Krishna, one cannot see the universal form of God. Because in one sense, you can say if someone gets punched in the face, that's a type of universal form. But not in the same sense that Arjuna saw the universal form. So one, first of all, has to become a pure devotee of Krishna, then he can claim that he can show the universal then he can claim that he can show the universal form of what he has seen. He can show the universal form of what he has seen. Let's see if that makes sense. So first of all, one has to become a pure devotee of Krishna. Then he can claim that he can show the universal form of what he has seen. English problem there. A devotee of Krishna can see the universal form, basically. A devotee of Krishna cannot accept false incarnations or followers of false incarnations. They are rascals, as Prabhupada would say. Next text. Mate vyatamacha vimuda bhavo drishtarupam goramidrin namedam yapetavi pritamana punastvam tadeva me rupamidam prapasya. Ma, let it not be. Te, unto you, vyata, trouble. Ma, let it not be. Cha, also vimuda bhavaha, bewilderment, drishva, by seeing. Rupam, form. Goram, horrible, idrik, as it is. Mama, my, idam, this. Yapeta vihi, free from all fear, pritimanaha, pleased in mind, puna, again, twam, you, tat, that, eva, thus, may, my, rupam, form, idam, this, prapasya, just see. You have been perturbed and bewildered by seeing this horrible feature of mine. Now, let it be finished. Mind from all disturbances, with a peaceful mind, you can now see the form you desire. So Krishna is taking away this vision of the universal form and showing Arjuna the form of God, the four-handed form. In the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was worried about killing Bhishma and Drona, his worshipful grandfather and master. But Krishna said that he need not be afraid of killing his grandfather. When the sons of Dhritarashtra tried to disrobe Draupadi in the assembly of the Kurus, Bhishma and Drona were silent, and for such negligence of duty, they should be killed. I think most of you know that story. Okay. It's a gambling match. Draupadi, the wife of the Pandavas, was lost in the gambling match to Duryodhana, and Duryodhana thought that he could disrobe her, defame her in front of everybody in this big assembly, and Bhishma and Drona did not say anything. Why did Bhishma and Drona not say anything, even though they knew better? Because they had taken a promise, or made a promise, to be loyal to the king. So certain times, promises are meant to be broken. Promises should only be kept. Let me turn this off. Promises should only be kept if there's a good result. And we spoke about this many times before, that if in telling a lie or breaking a promise you can save someone's life, hell, do it. So they could have actually protected Draupadi, because in the Vedic culture, it is very important, of supreme importance, to protect women. Anyone who offends a woman goes to hell. Hell. Got it? They go to hell. Anyone who offends a woman goes to hell. So they violated one of the prime injunctions in the Vedic culture. And so Bhishma and Drona, they didn't say anything. They said, well, we made a promise to listen to whatever the king says, so we have to just sit back. I mean, they didn't like what was happening, but they didn't do anything. Someone else, Vidura, tried to do something, but he didn't have the power to do anything. But Bhishma and Drona would have had the power. They were fierce Kshatriyas. They could have defeated anybody there had they decided to interfere with this. Fortunately, we had Krishna, and Krishna interceded and protected Draupadi by providing unlimited cloth. So even when Duryodhana's brother, Dushasana, attempted to disrobe Draupadi, he was unsuccessful because he kept pulling on the cloth, pulling on the cloth, pulling on the cloth, and he never came to the end of the cloth. So by such negligence of duty, if someone allows this, really, see how strict it is in the Vedic culture? That if a woman is abused, if a woman is not protected, even not protected, Bhishma and Drona weren't the ones who were directly abusing the lady, but they were sitting there and watching it happen. They were guilty because they didn't do anything. So negligence of duty. Simply by negligence of duty, they should have been condemned to death, and they were condemned to death by Krishna. Krishna showed his universal form to Arjuna just to show him that these people were already killed for their unlawful action. Can you imagine how strict the Vedic culture was? That scene was shown to Arjuna because devotees are always peaceful and they cannot perform such horrible actions. The purpose of the revelation of the universal form was shown. Now Arjuna wanted to see the four-armed form, and Krishna showed him. So in other words, in addition to the purpose of having the universal form to show how God should prove himself, or someone could prove himself to be God, in addition to that, it was to assure Arjuna that he was going to do the right thing by killing these rascals, because they were negligent. They did not protect Draupadi. Just by that one act, they were condemned to death. It's very interesting. I mean, modern society, the women are not protected, the children are not protected, old people are not protected. It's a horrible society. And the government many people in the government are actually behind this lack of protection. A devotee is not much interested in the universal form, for it does not enable one to reciprocate loving feelings. Same thing I said several times. Either a devotee wants to offer his respectful, worshipful feelings, or he wants to see the two-handed Krishna form, so that he can reciprocate in loving service with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I guess if you were going to offer something in universal form, you could offer everything, because it's a non-vegetarian form of the Lord. Because when Arjuna saw the universal form, what did he see? He saw everybody rushing into the mouths of the universal form. Not only is it non-vegetarians, don't want to say cannibal, but not really cannibal, but I'm making a play here, that Krishna kills everybody. He's the ultimate killer. And so you definitely don't want to worship the universal form of the Lord on the altar or anything like that, because what would you offer him? It'd be hard to figure that out. Okay, and we'll do maybe one more verse. Sanjaya vacha ityarjunanam vasudevas tatotva svakam rupam darshayam ashabuya ashvashayam asa chavitamenam bhutva puna somya vabhu vahatma. Sanjaya vacha, Sanjaya said, iti das Arjunam, unto Arjuna Vasudevaha, Krishna tata, in that way, Uttva speaking, Swakam, his own, Rupam form, Darshayam asa, showed, Bhuyaha, again, Aha ashvashayam, asa, encouraged, Cha, also, Bitam, fearful, Enam, him, Bhutva, becoming, Puna, again, Somya Vapahu, the beautiful form, Aha Atma. Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, having spoken thus to Arjuna, displayed his real four-armed form, and at last showed his two-armed form, thus encouraging the fearful Arjuna. Purport. When Krishna appeared as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, he first of all appeared as four-armed Narayan. But when he was requested by his parents, he transformed himself into an ordinary child in appearance. Similarly, Krishna knew that Arjuna was not interested in seeing a four-handed form, but since Arjuna asked to see this four-handed form, Krishna also showed him this form again, and then showed himself in his two-handed form. The word Somya Vapahu is very significant. Somya Vapahu is a very beautiful form. It is known as the most beautiful form When he was present, everyone was attracted simply by Krishna's form. And because Krishna is the director of the universe, he just banished the fear of Arjuna, his devotee, and showed him again his beautiful form of Krishna. In the Brahma Samhita, in the 5th chapter, text 38, it is stated, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. Only a person whose eyes are smeared with the ointment of love can see the beautiful form of Sri Krishna. So we will end here, and tomorrow we'll continue with text 51, and we're almost finished with the chapter right now. So let us stop sharing the screen, and then we will go to questions and answers. Give me 1 second to unmute everybody. Prabhupada ki jai. Okay. Who has a question, or does anyone have a question?
Hi Krishna, Gurudev.
Hey, Priya.
Okay. About I was thinking of Vrinda Devi, and I was wondering because she's an expansion of Radharani, right?
Yes.
So, and she like sets all the scenes. So is that like a mood of like service?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Okay, so that's her relationship with
Yeah,
Krishna.
service to Radha. And it's just like the set director in some sort of play. Just set the scenes, put the scenery behind there, turn the lights on in a certain way. And she actually arranges for the weather and everything, too.
So is it like because there's other expansions of Radharani too. Is it like she wants to experience different rasas?
Yeah.
And really,
Everyone wants to experience different circumstances and rasas. And we talked before about the indirect rasas. Remember the direct rasa? Direct rasa, conjugal love, and then there's the indirect rasa like shock, bhuta, the chivalry, there's anger, and different things like humor, stuff like that. So it's like different spices in the vegetable.
the indirect rasas, do they like change with the mood,
Yeah, they
or
change the mood.
are they
They change the
fixed?
mood, but they don't. They don't. Sometimes they become more prominent than the direct rasa for some period of time, but it's just temporary. The
But
indirect
they
rasas are temporary influences on the direct rasa.
okay.
The
So like
direct rasa, let's say Radharani's relationship with Krishna is conjugal rasa, and but it's flavored from time to time with anger. But then sometimes the anger goes away, and then sometimes there's shock, and sometimes there's humor. So it changes, just like in the material world, people have different emotions. Of course, you don't know about emotions, but anyway, so people have different emotions in this material world, and I don't know about emotions, but anyway, so people have different emotions in the material world, and it changes. Actually, sometimes it changes dramatically. Sometimes I'm talking to people, and 1 second they're extremely depressed, and another second they start laughing hysterically. And so it's like that in the spiritual world. At 1 second, Radharani is really angry with Krishna. Super angry. There's that story, the Gauri Kund story, where Radharani doesn't want to see Krishna because Krishna somehow or other called her by her competitor's name, Chandravali, name, which means many moons. So then she goes to this place of Gaurikund and has her gopi friends stand guard with sticks to keep Krishna from coming. And then Krishna, in order to come and see her, what did they say? He dresses up in drag. Anyway, those of you who don't know what drag means, he dresses up. He dresses up as a lady, as a forest lady, and then somehow or other, he introduces himself or herself at this particular point to Radharani, and they embrace each other, and then all of her her anger, just disappears immediately. Then what happens is that, this is so interesting, but it's hard for people to understand. Then her mother-in-law and so-called husband happen to come upon the scene, and she is in anxiety. That's another indirect rush. She's in anxiety, fear. And so she faints immediately. So it's like one after the other, like, phew, every second there's a different emotion. So then she faints on the ground, completely flat out on the ground like that. And her mother-in-law, sorry, it's a mother-in-law story. Her mother-in-law and husband come in, so-called husband, Abhimanyu, but not a real husband, just false. Come in, and Radharani's thinking, now I've gotten caught. Oh my God, what's going to happen to me? And so, but she forgets when she's fainting that Krishna is actually dressed up like a woman, so nobody's going to think that she's with Krishna. So, and Krishna's dressed up like the deity. It's a temple to Gauri, who's Durga, the manifestation of Durga. So Krishna's dressed up like the deity, and he looks just like the deity at this particular point. And they think that Radharani is offering obeisances to the deity who's come out of the deity, the person who's come out of the deity. And so they're thinking, oh, Radharani is very pious, she's serving the deities. And so, but she's fainted, she's lost her external consciousness. But Krishna is in the mood of humor. So as the deity, he begins to basically threaten Abhimanyu, who's Radharani's so-called husband, and Abhimanyu's mother, by saying that, Abhimanyu is going to get killed because he distrusted Radharani. So Krishna's very humorous. Radharani's in anxiety. Krishna's humorous. I mean, you got all these different mixtures of the rasas. And then Abhimanyu and his mother are complete anxiety. And finally, they apologize to the deity Gauri, who is actually Krishna. And they leave the scene, and then Krishna and Radharani get back together, and Radharani gives up her anxiety, and anyway, you get the idea. So that's the Gaurikund story. And those of you who want to go to Govardhan with us will actually get a chance to hear that story. That's a beautiful story. We go to Gaurikund sometimes. So anyway, so that's it. It just keeps switching. The actual emotions are so intense, and it switches from 1 second to intense anger, to intense relief that there's Krishna there, to intense anxiety, to intense relief again. And that's the spiritual world. Every minute, okay? I'd like to go there.
Thank you, Gurudev. Also, we can't see you anymore. Your camera.
Oh, you can't see me? Oh, because I just went to the spiritual world while we were talking. I got too excited and started raising my hand. So I just got so excited about this Gaurikund story that I just went, oh, like that. The camera went to look up the spiritual world. Okay. So who else has a question? Good question.
Gurudev.
Hey, Praneshwara, what's the question?
Like, is negligence is like offensive, and what are the best practices to avoid negligence, and what is the worst form of
Practice
the
is not to be
negligence?
negligent. There's actually two types of crimes. One is called commission, and the other one is omission. I don't know if everyone understands those two words. Commission means you do something. Let's say you commit a crime. Oh, let's say I attack someone. I wouldn't attack someone. Let's say someone attacks someone on the street. That's commission. But if I have the ability to defend that person, then I'm also committing a crime, maybe not legally, but morally, by not protecting the person. If you have the ability, actually, let me just unpack this a little more. This is actually interesting. If you have the ability to save people and give them Krishna consciousness, and you are simply interested, I'm speaking in general, not just you, but someone is simply interested in their own spiritual life and they have the ability to save others, that's a criminal. I mean, maybe it's not karmic or anything like that, but it's horrible. Let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say if I have the ability to help people in Krishna consciousness, and then I decide to go live in Vrindavan for the rest of my life. I mean, I'm not saying it's criminal, but it's a negligence of duty. I've neglected my duty. I may say, because I mean, nobody would criticize. I say, I'm 71 years old, I've had it. What do they say? Goodbye, cruel world. There's actually a song in the 1960s. It was Goodbye, cruel world. I've gone to join the circus. But anyway, so my song would be Goodbye, cruel world. I've gone to Govardhan. So anyway, I mean, people would say, yeah, we understand this old guy went to Govardhan, and he just wants to become a Babaji. We understand that. He's already done enough service. But I'd be negligent. As long as you have some life in your body and you're able to help others, you should help others. Simply being interested in one's own personal salvation or ecstasy is not Prabhupada's mood, not the mood of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So don't be negligent. You have the greatest gift, so you have to help others. As Lord Chaitanya said to people, Amarigai Guru Hoy Tore Desh. You know the science of Krishna. It doesn't matter. Keep a vipra, keep a nyasi. Whoops. You heard that loud bang? That was my squirrels throwing nuts at me. Anyway, so it's actually getting to be the fall pretty soon. So these squirrels up in the tree, they're harvesting their nuts, and they're opening up the nuts and they're throwing it down on my house and on my deck outside. So anyway, Kiva Vipra, Kiva Nyasi, Shudra Kena Nai, Ye Krishna Tattva Veta, Se Guru Hai. If one knows the science of Krishna, it is their duty to be guru, to help others. Otherwise, they're negligent. I'm not saying, they're going to go to hell or anything like that, but it's negligence. If you see people suffering, like if I walk down the street and see someone who's just been run over by a car and I can at least call 911 or help them, and I just walk on, then I'm heartless. So all of you, I mean everybody here, if you see people suffering, it's your duty to help them. If you give them this knowledge, what's the use of this knowledge if you don't use it to help other people? You just sit and you just display your erudition, how many verses you can recite. What's the use? Anyway, so that's negligence. So Praneshwar, you have so much knowledge, you should help people. Or if you can't help people by preaching directly, help people with your business, help people with your intelligence, like that, which you are doing. Anyways, don't be negligent. The whole world is on fire. Especially now. Anyway. It's always on fire. Death is always there. So it's our business to help people. I've dedicated myself to helping people. I couldn't picture myself just going to Govardhan and just sitting down and saying, goodbye, cruel world. I mean, I'll go there once or twice a year as soon as I can, but just to get it enlivened and take care of 10,000 disciples who follow me to Govardhan every year. It's interesting. When I first started going to Govardhan, I thought, this is nice, a spiritual retreat. We can be so happy, chant Hare Krishna, so I go out by myself around Govardhan in ecstasy. Hey Radhe, Brajadeva Ke, Hey Nanda Shuno Kuta. And then all of a sudden I looked and 10,000 people followed me to Govardhan. So I thought, Krishna's teaching me a lesson. Work now, samadhi later. So anyway, maybe I'll run away somewhere else. Okay, on that happy note, any other questions? Okay. Other
We're here.
people, questions?
It's Chitralekha here.
Chitralekha? Yeah, Chitralekha. Why don't you ask a question?
Okay. Yes. In one of your last week, some morning classes, you were talking about how everything that we see in this material world has its equivalent in its purest form in the spiritual world. You were talking actually about like a
Yeah.
spiritual intoxication or something like that. So
Right.
I was wondering, like, which would be the pure form of disease and death in the spiritual world.
That's actually described as one of the Vyabhachari bhavas, the emotions. That there's 33. They're called Sanchariya Vyabhachari bhavas. That I mean, there's no actual death of a body in the spiritual world because everybody's body is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. But when Krishna apparently goes to Mathura, leaving Vrindavan, then the gopis experience Krishna's separation like death. Or, like when Krishna went to dance on the heads of the Kaliya serpent, he went into the Kaliya lake, then it was like death, or devastation experienced by the gopis and by actually Mother Yashoda, by all the residents of Vrindavan at that particular point. So that's the original form of, let's say, the perverted reflection that we have in this world known as death and disease. The disease, just like it feels sick in separation from Krishna. So all these things are there as spiritual emotions, which is really nice. Doesn't sound nice to you, but it sounds nice to me. So all these things are not, these things are actually there in the spiritual world. All these intense feelings, devastation, death. I mean, I don't have the list of the 33 Vyabhachari bhavas now, but they're really intense. I mean, I have it on my computer, but I'm not going to read it to you. So these things are really intense. It's, what does Lord Chaitanya say? Jugayitam nimishena chakshusha pravashayitam shunyayitam jagat sarvam govinda vidahename. Oh Krishna, feeling your separation, I'm considering an instant. Not just a moment, an instant. I mean, it's interesting. Nimisha means like 11th of a second or something. An instant, just like a blink of the eye, to be like an eternity. It's interesting. I would like a better translation of the Shikshashtaka than the one that we have in the songbook. Because Yugayitam nimishena chakshusha pravashat shunyayitam jagat sarvam govinda. The whole world is vacant. It's void in your absence. Not seeing you, Krishna. Nothing has any meaning. That's like death right there. Nothing has any meaning. Everything is useless. Everything is hopeless. I mean, talk about depression. That's depression on steroids, as we would say. Feeling your separation. Anyway, thank you for your question. I think we're going to end now. And we're going to end. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. It's actually interesting. I think Krishna Priya had her hand up. Whoops. Of course, Krishna Priya's name is not even spelled properly. Does everybody see that? It says Krishna.
It must be a different Krishna Priya because I don't have my hand up.
Oh, yes, your hand is up.
Oh, maybe it's up from yesterday or something. Let me look.
I'll put your hand down. I just put your hand down.
Yeah, because I didn't have it up.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
so
my name is spelled
but
wrong.
your name is spelled wrong. You got to retype your name.
I don't know how it got there wrong. Oh, yeah, my hand is up too. My name's up.
It's down now. Admavan, you had a question? Your hand is
Yeah.
up?
I took it down.
Admavan.
I'll fix my name afterward.
Okay. I think everybody's hands down. Okay, we're going to end now. We'll see everybody same time, same station tomorrow night. All glories to His divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada.